Hello, and welcome back to Curlington Stories. If you're new here, welcome to you too. Today, we've got two stories to talk about. Decided to kind of spice things up and go back to what I used to do with two stories for a video because both of them just caught my attention and they're about the same topic, just two different sides of the coin here. So the first one will be about an entire family that basically decided to go vegan except for one person. And of course, naturally, they had to constantly remind that person that they were an animal abusing piece of poo. And they weren't having it. So they continued to consume meat no matter what they berated them with. They even tried to choke out their diet by not providing meat or any other animal products in the household for them. So they had to get a job and pay for it themselves because they weren't going to do it for them. Yeah, it's a really interesting one, but we'll get to it shortly. The second story is about someone who obviously, decided to go vegan. They watched Dominion, the typical setup, I saw exploitation, all this stuff for what it is, and completely changed my outlook on life. And then, of course, they took the natural next step and tried to force it on others around them. And it wasn't received well at all. Let's get into it. Am I the asshole refusing to go vegan after my whole family did? A bit of background here. I'm a teenager, 17M, who works a part-time job, so if you're suggesting I buy and cook my own food, I could say I am more than happy to. When I was 13, my sister, 14F now, and 10F then, went vegan after learning about animal slaughter and all that kind of stuff. We respected her decision but continued eating meat ourselves and found substitutes she liked. Recently, my sister showed my parents 48F and 48M a documentary about the environmental impacts of eating meat and inside the slaughterhouse where animals are killed. They decided to go vegetarian. However, they later learned that dairy is violating cows according to their words and decided to go vegan. I honestly didn't care as long as I can continue eating my pepperoni pizzas and pork burgers. However, they began to tell me I should go vegan too. I politely refused, but every now and then they did suggest I did, and I was contributing to the problem of eating meat. I politely refused and told them I respect their choice, but I'm sticking to my meat and dairy. Last week they announced they were going to stop buying meat as it wastes money and start me on a transition to veganism by gradually removing animal products from my diet. I said I want to continue eating meat and dairy, but they were not having any of it. They told me it's time to stop contributing to animal quote-unquote abuse and I should just give it a go. I decided to buy my own meat from now on using the money from my part-time job. I'm doing cookery class at school and I'm good at it. I bought my meat and put it in the freezer. A few days ago, after I'd eaten meals without meat such as chili without the meat and regular pizza as we just tend to eat them anyway, I decided to cook my pork burgers. My family were having vegan burger substitute, which I was fine with. I set the table and put my burger on my plate. They saw it and asked me what I was doing. I said since they weren't going to buy or cook me meat, I would buy my own. They flipped out and told me a whole new load of lies about veganism. Veganism stops cancer, heart disease, and prevents pandemics, but I decided to have my burger anyway. We had dinner and afterwards my parents told me I needed to embrace the vegan diet. I told them I will eat what I want and they don't have to pay or cook it. Since then, meal times have been quite quiet except when we eat meals which happen to not contain meat or dairy, where one of my parents usually says I should just go vegan full time. My sister honestly doesn't care what diet I do though and says it's my choice. My parents think I am contributing to the problem. Am I the asshole? Well, this is an easy one. No, absolutely not. How could you possibly be the a-hole because you want to provide food for yourself that they don't want to eat? Veganism is a choice that you make for yourself and yourself alone. You don't get to make that choice for other people. That is their decision. If they decide that, their morals don't align with consuming meat or dairy, then they can make that choice. It's that simple. I don't know why it's so unbelievably common that people want to push this belief onto others. It's nice to see that the sister understands that this is her brother's choice and that she has no say in it, but the parents, on the other hand, for some reason can't get a grip. Now, what I always find particularly interesting is that they get the information from these documentaries and stuff that show you how terrible factory farms, the dairy industry are, all of that stuff, right? But they never have documentaries that actually explain, the ins and outs, the ugly and the pretty of veganism, right? Why do so many people quit? Why do so many people say, well, vegan diet didn't work for me, I had health problems, I was gonna die, my acne was crazy, my skin was bad, all of these things. Why do people say these things? It's because there's no transparency when these documentaries, reach your TV screen in the living room. They don't give the transparency. They don't give you the caveats. They don't say, hey, if you're going to be on a vegan diet, you need to do this, and that to ensure you have the best chance at being completely healthy. A lot of people go vegan thinking that it's healthy as long as they just don't consume meat at all. So you find them eating Oreos and potato chips, drinking lots of soda, lots of things that are vegan but aren't healthy. And they end up finding themselves in a health crisis. Now, even if they do go vegan and they choose like healthy options, many times they find themselves with nutrient deficiencies because they're not a dietitian, they're not an expert on nutrition. And the vegan diet, as strict as it is, and you're taking out the literal most nutrient dense food group, which is meat, taking that out entirely, the most simple food for a human being to digest and to extract nutrients and use them from, it complicates things. When you remove that, things get difficult very, very quickly. And the fact that they don't even tell people this sort of stuff and they expect you to go vegan, and many do, they get guilt tripped into it, and then they find themselves with health problems that could be life-threatening or long-lasting, extremely uncomfortable for whatever duration of time, and then they quit veganism altogether and decide, I will never come back to it. They swear it off, which I guarantee you is likely happening to the parents here. They're probably going to find themselves in that same situation. At their ages, I'm sure it's not going to be the easiest thing in the world, especially when they're clearly not actually that knowledgeable about the nutrition itself, because you wouldn't expect this for someone who's still growing, like a 17-year-old or a 10-year-old, to be vegan. It's not a good thing. It's not a good idea. He doesn't talk about like the health situations of his younger sister or anything like that, but a vegan diet is not recommended for young children at all. It's not even recommended for most adults, but especially not growing children. The amount of neurological and developmental damage you can cause on an inadequate vegan diet is insurmountable. So no, I think this person is standing their ground and choosing themselves over choosing what their family wants. It's perfectly acceptable. That is not assholey behavior. This is your choice. This is your life. This is your body. You get to choose what you eat, what you put in, what your morals are, what your ethics are, what you stand on, what you care about, what you want to support or not support, etc. They don't get to choose that for you. And they absolutely shouldn't have allowed that 10-year-old to do that either. But no, that's neither here nor there. All right, y'all. Let's move on to the next story. Leave your comments for this one below. I'm curious what you guys have to say. Am I the asshole for forcing my vegan views on my friend's child? I, F25, decided to become vegan at the beginning of this year. I watched Dominion and just sat there crying the whole time, pretty much. So decided I can't knowingly pay for animals to be treated like that anymore. Since then, I've been doing really well and I feel a lot better. I cook a lot of my own food, usually stews, curries, chilies, and various other meals. My friends and her 6-year-old came around my house for a catch-up. The child asked if they could have something to eat, so I offered to make him a sandwich and listed off some of the options in my house: peanut butter and jam, yeast extract, etc. He asked for ham. I explained that I don't keep meat in the house as I don't eat it, so I wouldn't be able to make him a ham sandwich. He then started asking why I don't eat it, so I explained that to make ham, they have to kill pigs, and I don't agree with killing animals for food. He got really upset and started crying and asking his mom why she feeds him dead animals. And my friend got really annoyed at me for telling him where food comes from. They left pretty quickly, and my friend texted me later on calling me all sorts of names and telling me I shouldn't push my extremist views on her child, who now is refusing to eat meat. Maybe I should have just kept my mouth shut, but I feel like children have a right to know and understand what it is they're eating, and I only spoke about it because he was interested and asked me. So am I the asshole? I would say no. I feel like 6 might be a little young to, explain exactly where their food comes from. But regardless, that's neither here nor there. They asked and all you did was answer. And you didn't answer in like the typical belligerent vegan way or, start berating people and the whole industry and all that. You just gave the very simple response of, I don't like where this food comes from and I don't agree with it. It's that simple. And I don't feel like this story, it seems a little inflated to me. I doubt that kid really was like, I'm gonna stop eating meat. Like, most kids are too young at that age to even fully grasp death or what that really means, Like when I was younger, around actually probably even a little bit older than that, and I was told that like pepperoni comes from pigs. Like that didn't like strike me at all. I was just like, oh, okay. And I continued to eat my pepperoni. Obviously it's anecdotal, from one person's experience to another's going to be different. I just have a hard time believing that a 6-year-old would refuse to eat one of their favorite foods after that, especially such an inquisitive child, one who's asking, oh, where did the food come from? Like, well, I guess they didn't ask that, but why that they decide to not have, meat in their home, or why they choose not to eat it. Like, that's a very inquisitive child. I don't know. I really don't know. Sounds a little fishy to me. I could be completely wrong. I might be being skeptical for absolutely no reason. And it doesn't matter at the end of the day. I think the person who is calling their friend and calling them names and stuff, I think they're a little bit more problematic. It's unfortunate that your kid's like, I don't want to eat meat anymore. Because there's nothing you can really, there's not a whole lot you can really do about that other than, tell them that it's perfectly fine, it's perfectly normal. Like a kid will likely listen to you at that age, would likely listen to you. Because the truth is, you don't want to raise your kid vegan. It's dangerous for them. Their health becomes a serious problem if you're not an absolute expert. You don't have a dietitian in your corner every single day in your household, planning out your meals with you for your kid. It is difficult to track their nutrient levels, things of all that. There's so many problems that can come with feeding a kid a vegan diet, and it's not just a matter of whether you're giving them the correct nutrients. It's whether their body is accepting those nutrients from the plant-based sources and actually using them. So you can give them all the nutrients that they're supposed to get every single day, but whether their body converts them to something that it can actually use, actually absorbs them properly, etc., is extremely difficult to keep up with, and is a genuine problem. There are kids who have gone blind from veganism, who had stunted growth, brain issues, kids who weren't able to speak because they were vegan since basically birth, besides being fed breast milk. But after that, not being able to develop speech. There's so many problems that are just not worth risking when it comes to children and veganism. Yeah, how do you combat this? How do you go forward then? Because this is really important. Now, this isn't for the original poster. They're kind of in the clear. I don't blame them. I don't think it's their fault. But the parent here does have a job or responsibility to make sure that their kid is getting the nutrients and everything that they need to be healthy and strong and have a normal growth development. And so I think it is extremely wise to explain to your 6-year-old that even though, ham comes from animals, that it is perfectly okay and is normal. That is what a human being is designed to eat. There's a reason that our stomach's pH is so acidic. It's literally equivalent to many carnivores. Because for thousands, tens of thousands of years, humans have depended on meat to get nutrients, and it is still a necessity today for most people. Some people can be healthy on a vegan diet, and I know some people use that as like a kind of a gotcha, like, well, I'm healthy on a vegan diet, everybody can be. It doesn't really work like that. I'll give you a counterexample that parallels this perfectly. My mother has smoked her entire life. There's people who've smoked even longer, smoked a lot, a pack a day kind of stuff, and have never developed any lung-related issues, no lung cancer or anything like that, black lungs, nothing. That doesn't then mean that, oh, you can smoke your entire life and never experience lung issues. What that means is that every single person's body is different. Some people who have better genetics can handle smoking every single day and never have issues. Someone who has more regular or worse genetics can't. They might get lung cancer after just a couple of years of smoking. Just how somebody might be thriving or doing great on a vegan diet for many years or their entire life, but then you transfer that exact same diet to someone else and it has them in a coffin within 5 years. It's something you always have to be aware of. And that's why it's just not worth it to allow your child to be vegan. You don't know what the outcome is going to be. And by the time you do know, it could be something that's irreversible that will affect them for the rest of their lives negatively. It's not worth the risk, so don't do it. Now, I'm going to read a couple of the comments because everybody voted not the asshole generally. So I want to see what these guys say. If anybody kind of said anything close along the lines of what I said, or if they kind of approached it from, more surface level. So this one says, not the asshole people, and yes, kids too should know where their food comes from. You didn't force any views onto the child. You explained you don't like eating dead animals. It's totally valid. Now, this person says, I'm giving a soft "you're the asshole." I think she could have just said that she just chooses not to eat it. That's it, her preference. She didn't have to go into any detail about why. I don't eat pork, and when people ask, and I'm talking about adults, I just tell them I choose not to eat it and haven't for decades. I don't lie and say I'm allergic or say there are religious reasons why, which are both untrue. I don't eat it because of something I saw in science class years ago when dissecting animals, but I don't explain that to anyone. It's unnecessary. And this person responds as well, what if he asks, why do you choose not to eat it? The strategy only goes so far with children's curiosity. That's a really dumb thing to say, right? If the kid for some reason follows up with that question, you just simply go, it's just my preference. There's really nothing else to it. And if they keep prying, you ignore them. It's a child. Like, you aren't like forced to give a detailed response to a kid. You give whatever response you're willing to give. Now, I do kind of agree. Like, I'm a little bit in the middle on the fence about this. Again, I don't think they're an asshole for just giving the answer that is truthful to them. But to be fair, they could have left that up to their parents to decide whether or not to tell their kid about, where the meat comes from, etc. It's not really your responsibility to do that sort of thing. That's my only gripe with the original poster's response. My only real criticism. But regardless of what this person is saying is quite truthful. You really didn't have to give him the details. It wasn't a requirement. There wasn't like a quick time, like a cutscene event or whatever, and you had like dialogue choices, and it was either tell him the truth or smack him in the face. Those weren't like your only two options. You had other options, and I will say you chose one of the worst ones that you could have in the moment. I still don't think you're an asshole, but you could have done better is all I'm really saying. But I'm kind of curious, what do you guys think of this story? Please leave your thoughts and opinions in the comment section below. See you guys next time.